right. Okay, this is David Knowles. I'm here for Carbon and the City on CJAI 92.1 Amherst Island Radio, and we're talking with Jay Bradley of Q Electronics. And so, Jay, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Q Electronics?
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's great. This is fantastic. So Q Electronics is a company that I kind of made as a production company, something I've always wanted to do since I was a little one, working for other production companies. And it started off basically as a DJ supplier, believe it or not. So supplying DJ equipment to rentals and lights, sound, video for shows.
Okay.
And it's now expanded more into, well, live bands and rentals and festivals. So right now, we're sitting in Spearhead,
right,
and I do the production here for the events in the brewery and in the tap room.
Yeah, and that's your equipment there up front?
Yeah.
That's your equipment back there?
That's right.
Yeah?
That's right. So anytime the musicians come in, they don't have to haul a whole bunch of gear in. It's here, it's ready to go, and it's a nice contract that I have with them. Spearhead's been really good to me.
And the reason I wanted to have you is because Amherst Island Radio, as you probably know, we've got the Spearhead Performance Studio, and we bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 live acts a year.
Oh, fantastic.
And that's where the act will bring in their guitars and their drums and everything else, and they come across the ferry with us. They'll set up in the Spearhead studio.
Oh, sweet.
And,
that's great.
And they perform in there. So we bring in roughly 100 acts a year.
Oh, that's great.
And we've got the two studios. We've got the one studio, which is turntable for long playing vinyl, and then we've got the digital studio.
And you still play vinyl.
And we still there's a half a dozen guys that still play exclusively vinyl. Yeah.
And you know what? It's funny because I don't DJ anymore, but I will DJ if somebody wants vinyl.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the only time I'll DJ again.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you've got a collection of vinyl?
Oh, I still got my turntables. Yeah,
right? Yeah.
My records. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, there's one guy in particular, Bobby Maxwell, who does real alternative, and he plays exclusively vinyl. And he's amazing to listen to because he really, really knows his stuff. He gets down deep into who's playing what and who the band members are and so forth.
And since I'm a technologist, I get right into the other side. Who recorded it, who the engineer was, what microphones they used, that sort of stuff.
Excellent.
I started out with hi-fi, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember the old House of Sounds days. And,
oh, I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember. And that was two levels.
At one time it was.
Yeah. And now there's, what's downtown anymore?
Well, there isn't. I mean, Ash Force is there.
Ash Force.
Great people, but there's not too much, and they know their stuff. But at one time, geez, I think there was, 6 or 7 down there at one time.
And there's also, there's two now. There's Something Else Records, but there's also Brian's Record Option.
Oh, yes, there's Zap Records and Brian's Record Option. They do, yeah.
And
I'm so happy they're still open.
Yeah, and I'm forever into Brian's Record Option. About once or every couple of weeks with a list of what I want. And when he gets it in, he gives me a call. But I just, it occurred to me that we didn't have a sponsor for Bobby Maxwell's show. So the last time I was in, last week actually, I was in talking with Brian at Brian's Record Option, and I said, we've got one more vinyl show left, and you really need to sponsor it.
Yeah.
And he jumped right on
Good,
it.
good.
So,
yeah, I'm so glad he's still with us actually, because he was thinking about throwing in the towel when that big flood happened. But I'm so glad everything came out on top for him. Yeah.
Cool. So you've got something else going on. What?
Well, yeah. So I'm kind of a busybody. I don't stop. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but I also opened up a roller rink in Napanee. It's called Disco Ball Events.
Right. Yeah.
And it's something that I'm passionate about because I grew up at Studio 801 here in Kingston. As some might know as 13 Acres, Studio 801, and at the end there was Celebrity Sports World.
Right, yeah.
And
it's 13 acres?
13 Acres it started off as. I think 1976 when it opened.
Right,
yeah, and then it became Studio 801 in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And then Celebrity Sports World was the last name for the building, and it closed I think in 95.
Right, yeah.
I got a story about why it closed, but I'm not sure if we have enough time for that. But I must say, one of the passions that I grew up with is roller skating and dancing on the roller rink and listening to the disco music.
Right,
was that it's a childhood memory, and it's kind of got what got me into technology and DJing, quite honestly, because of the lights, the sound, and all the fun that we had. Now there's a lot of parents around town that have been saying the last 10 years or maybe even longer that I wish we had something like that for our kids.
Right.
So for the last 5 years, I've been doing a lot of research, and I finally got a chance to open it. So so what we have is a roller skating venue in Napanee, and I lucked out because of the Lennox Agricultural Society, the Fair Board, the Napanee Fair Board, had this venue available, this old arena that doesn't produce ice anymore at 170 York Street. It's the old arena in Napanee.
Yep.
And apparently they just close it down in the winter because there's no heat. It's too cold in there.
Okay, yeah.
So I researched this, what would it cost to put heat in there in the winter? Next thing you know, it turned into a big venture. It's very successful. A lot of people are really supportive of it, and we get really good numbers coming out every weekend. Yes.
Yeah. And going into COVID-19, you're.
Yeah, we are closed down, of course, for this weekend, and we're waiting for the official announcement of how long this is going to last and that sort of thing. But we're just going to play it day by day, week by week, really on that. It is affecting us, of course, and you know we have to be socially responsible to shut down.
Yeah.
But I have to say that you know once they give us the go ahead to open back up, we're opening up because everybody is pretty upset that we're closed.
Any plans to put some skateboarding in?
Well, actually, believe it or not, skateboarding is a little bit more dangerous. The way the insurance works with this sort of thing is very unique because it's not something that everybody does. And a lot of the old roller skating rinks are still using the grandfathered insurance plans.
Okay.
Right? So as far as the new insurance goes, it's really challenging to do above and beyond anything than roller skating. So I would love to do, and don't get me wrong, I would love to do more, like even BMX and a little bit more, let's say extreme sports and that sort of thing, but there is a lot of limitations. Yeah.
I know when my kids were growing up, they were, both my boys were, and the entire neighborhood was right into skateboarding.
Oh yeah.
And I was forever being asked to build something in the driveway. And I was skateboarding, and I'm sure it's still there, on Highway 2, just as you're going into Napanee.
Absolutely, yeah, it's still there. It's still there.
I used to take my kids down there every Saturday, and and I just sort of hang around while they skate.
And you know what? That's the great thing about roller skating. You can either inline skate, which we call blade runners, or roller skate on those parks as well.
All right, yeah,
which is really cool. There's a group out of I think San Francisco or something. I could be wrong, but they're called Moxie Girls. And they've gotten so popular on YouTube that they actually have their own skates made for them now.
Oh, is that that's roller derby kind of thing?
Well, kind of. They actually still use the outdoor skate parks, and they roller skate all around town.
Okay,
They're called the Moxie Girls. But yes, roller derby is definitely big, and we fully support the roller derby community in this area as well. So the roller derby girls come out all the time and have fun at the roller rink as well.
There's a group that comes into town called the Harley Women.
Oh yeah,
on Harley Davidson. So.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
they're more fun to look at. So anyway, cool. So what else you got going on?
Well, I mean, as a technologist, you know, CJAI Electronics is a production company, and something I should have mentioned to you as well, Dave, is that the reason why I think production is a big part of the roller skating is because you really can't have roller skating without some sort of light or sound.
Right.
So I think that's where I was able to do it, because I have a production company that saves me a lot of money from renting that stuff. Yeah. And I'm also a visionist, right? Like I'm a very creative person, I believe anyways. And I like to sit and look at a menu and see what I can do with it. Quite honestly, I think, you know, the big part of my plan here is, and I haven't said this to you off air, but if we have time, I'll just quickly say what my intent here is to rink. Is that a lot of people don't think out of the box when it comes to technology now, especially production for theater and stage shows and events, because they don't know what's out there. And where I'm going with this is that when you stop and think of a roller skating rink, you can't really roller skate 7 days a week. My whole plan here is to collect data for the roller skating rink and record demographics, so when it's time to actually go to an investor and open one here in Kingston or Napanee or Melbourne in this area. When you stop and think of it, and I've said this to many people, we live right in the middle of Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto, and we're right by the border. So why don't we have a convention center or some sort of trade show floor? It's a good question.
Yeah, that's true. In order for a trade show, we've got to pretty well turn it.
Central.
Yeah, and also, and
all you need is a big open room with a
Right.
flat floor, and you
Yeah.
let production do the rest.
Right, yeah.
Because one night you could have a fashion show,
Right,
the next
yeah, yeah.
night you could have a gala,
Mhm.
the next night you could have roller skating, the next you can have, I don't know what, even skateboarding, let's say.
So it's a just a big empty building that's not dedicated to any one specific thing.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's stopping the K-Rock Center from doing that is the hockey, of course.
Right, yeah.
You know, but I would say if this area really needs something like that because we're so central. And when I go to an investor, you know, I want to think big here. I want to think like Great Wolf Lodge sort of thing, where there's a potential water park, a potential go-karts. You know,
Right.
something family recreation as well as corporate, private sector, big companies meeting in the central spot like Kingston or Napanee to do the meetings.
Right.
You know, I had the privilege of working in Toronto for 6 years as a freelance technology guy for production. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of big production shows that I worked on. And we're even talking like private meetings. There was a lot of budget available
Yeah,
for something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So I think central to the bigger markets that surround us is a good idea. And that's my big sort of way of looking at this. And I think roller skating can definitely be a part of it. And I think that, you know, when you go to an investor, you can't just say, hey, roller skating is going to work. Look, I have to collect my solid numbers, and that's my plan. So I'm going to probably give it about 2 years. And then really reach out. Yeah.
Yeah, back in the 80s, I ran a full-service advertising agency. And Molson Breweries came to us and asked us to one, round up enough people for 2 focus groups, and then to organize all of the audio-visual to produce the focus groups.
Of course.
And then to find venues where we could bring in like 12 guys or 12 people, and they could conduct their focus group. We could bring in 12 more. They could conduct another focus group, and man, we had a heck of a time rounding up people who could organize the audio visual, and we had a heck of a time.
That's not a problem nowadays.
Not a problem nowadays, but in those days it was a heck of a problem, and we finally settled on the ambassador to hold the events. But
actually, that's a good example that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Apparently, Goodyear, which is one of the biggest Christmas parties in the area,
Right, yeah.
has to split their Christmas parties in 2 because there's no
there's
venue
no-
large
there's no-
enough.
Yeah.
So there's a good example right there.
Right, yeah. Well, and the ambassador really knows how to put on.
Oh, they do a fantastic job, and that's a big place,
Yeah.
but it's still not big enough, believe it or not.
Right.
It's one of the biggest in Kingston.
Ah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's true. Yeah, no, I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so.
yeah.
Anyway. All right, cool. So we've been talking with Jay Bradley of Q Electronics, and what's the name of the group?
Disco ball events.
Disco
roller
ball
skating.
events, roller skating in Napanee, and that's some pretty exciting stuff. So for Carbon and the City on Amherst Island Radio, that's all we have for today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Thanks for having me in, and thanks for coming in, Jay.
Thank you.